Taman Kang stared at the computer screen in the dimly lit PC bang, his eyes burning from hours of staring at the same 3 words. Exam results failed. The number next to his name was 43. He needed 50 to pass. 7 points. 7 stupid points stood between him and college, between him and everything he had worked for. He leaned back in the cheap plastic chair, feeling it creak under his weight. Around him, other teenagers shouted at their gaming screens, their voices mixing with the constant clicking of keyboards and mice. The smell of instant ramen and energy drinks hung thick in the air. It was 2:47 in the morning. He had been here since 8 yesterday evening. His phone buzzed. Battery at 3%. He picked it up and saw a message from Soman, his girlfriend. Well, his ex-girlfriend now, he realized as he read the text. She was breaking up with him. Via text message. At 2 in the morning. Because she did not want to date someone who could not even pass a simple exam. Taman did not cry. He did not throw his phone. He did not feel much of anything, really. He just set the phone down on the sticky desk and stared at it until the screen went dark. 3% battery, just like him. Almost completely drained, running on fumes, about to shut down entirely. He opened his email to distract himself. Spam, mostly. Advertisements for things he could not afford. Job postings for positions he was not qualified for. And then, buried between 2 ads for protein supplements, he saw something strange. The subject line read, "Congratulations, you have been selected as Earth's champion." Taman almost deleted it. Obviously spam. But something about the timing made him click it instead. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the numbness. Maybe he just wanted to see what kind of ridiculous scam was waiting inside. The email opened, and text filled his screen. Words in perfect Korean, talking about honor and glory and representing humanity in the 4027th Galactic Hunt. There was a big blue button at the bottom that said, "Accept this honor." Taman laughed. It was a dry, tired sound. A galactic hunt, sure, why not? His day was already terrible. Might as well click on obvious spam and probably download a virus. At this point, what difference would it make? He clicked the button. The world exploded in blue light. Taman felt his body being pulled apart and put back together, over and over, in the space of a heartbeat. His stomach lurched. His vision went white, then black, then filled with colors he did not have names for. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. He tried to close his eyes, but he did not think he had eyes anymore. And then suddenly he was standing. Not in the PC bang. Not in Seoul, not anywhere on Earth. He stood in an enormous chamber made of crystal that caught light from sources he could not see. The ceiling stretched up so high he could not make out the top. The floor beneath his feet was smooth and cold, and he realized he was still wearing his dirty sneakers, his old jeans, and his wrinkled black hoodie with the coffee stain on the sleeve. Around him stood creatures. That was the only word Taman's brain could find. Creatures. Not human. Definitely not human. There was something that looked like a 10-foot-tall lizard covered in scars and metal implants. Something else that seemed to be made of living shadows. A thing with 6 legs and too many eyes. A floating jellyfish made of light. Things with claws and fangs and weapons built into their bodies. They were all staring at him. A voice spoke, seeming to come from everywhere at once. It spoke in Korean, which was somehow more disturbing than if it had spoken in an alien language. "Welcome, champions. You represent the greatest hunters of your civilizations. For the next 7 solar cycles, you will compete in trials of combat, survival, and cunning. The victor's species gains Tier 1 status in the Galactic Council." Taman looked around. Everyone else looked ready. They had armor, weapons. They stood like soldiers, like warriors, like people who knew what they were doing. He looked down at himself. Coffee-stained hoodie. Dying phone in his pocket. The last of his money spent on PC bang hours that had just evaporated. He raised his hand. The voice stopped. Every creature in the chamber turned to look at him. He could feel their eyes, their attention, their confusion. "Yeah, hi," Taman said, his voice cracking slightly. "I think there's been a mistake. Also, is there Wi-Fi here?" For a moment, there was silence. Then the chamber filled with sounds, clicking, growling, hissing. It took Taman a second to realize they were laughing. They were all laughing at him. The giant lizard creature stepped forward. Up close, Taman could see that half its face was covered in metal, and one of its eyes glowed red. It looked down at him with something that might have been amusement. A human. It said, its voice like rocks grinding together. How entertaining. Tell me, soft flesh, what makes you worthy to stand among champions? Taman looked up at the creature. He should have been terrified. He probably would have been if he had any energy left for terror. But he was so tired. So completely done with everything. Nothing, he said honestly. I clicked on spam. I thought it was a scam. I'm probably having a mental breakdown right now. This is either a really weird dream or I'm dying in a PC bang and my brain is making up crazy stuff. The lizard creature tilted its head, studying him. The laughter in the chamber had stopped. Now there was just confused silence. A small floating orb of light drifted toward Taman. When it spoke, its voice was high and nervous. Oh no, no. I am Ambassador Quilks. I am very sorry, but I think I understand what happened. Earth's file was in the wrong database. You were not supposed to be contacted. Your species is classified as pre-contact. This is a terrible mistake. Great, Taman said. So can you send me back? I have classes tomorrow. Well, later today, technically. The orb flickered nervously. That is not possible. The hunt has begun. All champions have been announced. The ancient protocols do not allow for substitutions or withdrawals. You must compete. Taman stared at the floating orb, then at the lizard creature, then at all the other terrifying aliens around him. He should panic. He should cry. He should do something. Instead, he laughed. It was the same dry, tired laugh from before. Because of course this would happen. Of course the worst day of his life would get even worse. Of course clicking on spam would teleport him to an alien death tournament. Why would anything make sense anymore? Fine, he said. Whatever, do I get food here at least? The voice from before spoke again, sounding almost surprised. Champions will be provided with quarters and sustenance. Tomorrow the first trial begins. Survive for 48 hours in the hunting grounds. Those who fail will be eliminated. Prepare yourselves. The chamber began to empty as creatures filed out through doors that appeared in the crystal walls. Taman followed a group toward what he hoped was the quarters area. As he walked, he heard two aliens talking behind him. They spoke in their own language, but somehow he understood it. Some kind of translation technology, probably. What is the human's classification? One asked. Persistence predator, the other replied. Endurance hunter. Threat level is negligible. They barely have nuclear fission. The creature will die in the first trial. Taman kept walking. He was assigned a small room with a bed, a bathroom, and something that might have been a food dispenser. He collapsed onto the bed without taking off his shoes. His last thought before exhaustion pulled him under was simple. Well, at least my day can't get worse. Might as well see what happens. He was wrong, of course. It could always get worse. But for now, Taman Kang slept and dreamed of nothing at all. Taman woke to a loud sound that hurt his ears. He sat up in the strange bed, his head pounding, his mouth dry. For a second, he thought he was back in his room in Seoul. Then he saw the crystal walls and the alien bathroom, and everything came back to him. The voice from yesterday spoke again. Champions, report to the transport chamber. The first trial begins in 1 standard hour. Taman stumbled into the bathroom and splashed water on his face. The water was too cold and tasted slightly metallic, but it helped wake him up. He looked at himself in the mirror. Same tired eyes, same messy black hair, same hoodie, now even more wrinkled from sleeping in it. He looked like a kid who had pulled an all-nighter, not a galactic champion. He found the food dispenser and pressed buttons until it gave him something that looked almost like rice and vegetables. It tasted like cardboard, but he ate it anyway. He would need energy for whatever was coming. In the transport chamber, all 100 champions gathered. Taman noticed he was the only one who looked unprepared. Everyone else had weapons, armor, equipment. The lizard creature from yesterday had what looked like a plasma rifle strapped to its back. A wolf-like alien had claws that glowed with energy. Even the small creatures had dangerous-looking tools. Taman had a nearly dead phone and a hoodie with a coffee stain. The voice explained the first trial. They would be dropped into a biodome called the Hunting Grounds. It contained dangerous animals, poisonous plants, and automated drones that would hunt them. They had to survive for 48 hours. No weapons provided. No supplies. Just survive. The witness estimates 30% of champions will be eliminated, the voice said calmly, as if talking about the weather. 30 out of 100, Taman thought. 30 dead, just like that. The transport chamber flashed with light, and suddenly Taman was falling. He hit the ground hard, rolling through grass and mud. When he stopped rolling, he looked up and saw trees. Huge trees with purple leaves and trunks that seemed to pulse with light. The sky above was orange, not blue. 2 suns hung in the air, casting weird double shadows. Definitely not Earth. Taman stood up slowly, checking for injuries. His knee hurt and he had scraped his hands, but nothing was broken. He could hear sounds in the jungle around him. Rustling, clicking, movement. Other champions were already moving. Already starting their survival plans. Through the trees, Taman watched a 4-armed creature quickly building a shelter from branches. Another alien was digging into the ground, creating some kind of underground hiding spot. A third was climbing a tree, probably to get a better view of the area. They all knew what they were doing. They had plans, strategies, training. Taman sat down on a rock and pulled a protein bar from his hoodie pocket. He had forgotten it was there. It was smashed and probably a week old, but he ate it anyway. While he chewed, he thought, 48 hours, 2 days. He had stayed awake longer than that before, studying for exams. He had walked around Seoul for entire weekends with no real plan. He knew how to be bored, how to be tired, how to keep going when his body wanted to stop. Everyone else was rushing, building, hiding, fighting, making themselves obvious with all their activity. The drones would find them first. The predators would be attracted to the noise. So Taman decided to do something different. He stood up, picked a direction, and started walking. Not running, not hiding, just walking. Slow and steady, like he was going to school on a Monday morning. Too tired to rush, but too stubborn to be late. Hours passed. The jungle was hot and humid. Sweat soaked through his hoodie. His feet hurt in his worn-out sneakers. He saw strange animals watching him from the trees, but they did not attack. Maybe he was not moving fast enough to trigger their hunting instincts. Maybe he just looked too pathetic to bother with. He heard explosions in the distance, screams, the sounds of combat. Champions fighting the drones, or fighting each other, or fighting the environment. Taman kept walking, keeping his pace steady, making as little noise as possible. Night fell, one sunset then the other. The jungle became dark and filled with glowing plants that lit his path in shades of blue and green. Taman kept walking. His legs ached. His throat was dry, but he had been uncomfortable before. He could handle it. On Earth, in a command center in Seoul, Hana Yi watched the hologram screen with her heart pounding. She was a South Korean intelligence agent, and when they told her about the alien tournament, she had helped select a Navy SEAL to represent Earth. Somehow, the system had picked this random teenager instead. She watched Taman walk. Just walk for hours, while other champions died fighting or got caught by drones or fell into traps. The kid just walked, like he was going to the convenience store, like he had nothing better to do. He is going to die, one of her colleagues said. Any second now, but Taman did not die. He kept walking. On the second day, a wolf-like alien named Cross spotted Taman through the trees. Easy prey, Cross thought. The human was small, tired, unarmed. It would be a quick kill, and then Cross could focus on the real threats. Cross began to stalk the human, staying hidden, waiting for the perfect moment. But the human never stopped walking. Through the day, through the heat, never resting. Cross followed, growing more tired, more frustrated. When would this creature stop? When would it sleep? After 6 hours of stalking, Cross was exhausted. The human should have collapsed by now. Any normal prey would have stopped to rest. But this human just kept going, step after step, like a machine that did not know how to quit. Finally, at hour 42, Cross could not wait any longer. He attacked, leaping from the shadows with claws extended. Taman did not have time to think. He just reacted. He grabbed the first thing he could reach, a rock, and swung it. It hit Cross in the face. Cross yelped and swiped with his claws, cutting into Taman's shoulder. The pain was bright and sharp, but Taman did not stop. He grabbed dirt and threw it in Cross's eyes. He kicked, he bit. He fought like someone who had gotten into fights behind the school, messy and desperate and mean. Cross tried to retreat. This was not how prey was supposed to fight. But Taman followed him. Not running, just walking after him, bleeding from his shoulder, holding a rock, his eyes empty of fear and full of something that looked like anger. Cross panicked and howled. The sound attracted attention. A drone appeared, scanning the area. It locked onto Cross's heat signature and fired. Cross was eliminated. The drone ignored Taman, who was moving too slowly to register as a threat. Taman tore a piece of his hoodie and wrapped it around his bleeding shoulder. Then he kept walking. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the broadcast. They were confused. The human had no skills, no training, no strategy. He just continued, like he did not know he was supposed to give up. The giant lizard, whose name was Rexcal, watched from his viewing chamber. He had won this tournament 3 times before. He understood combat strategy, survival, but this human confused him. There was no technique to analyze, no pattern to counter, just relentless, stupid persistence. What kind of creature is this? Rexcal muttered to himself. The witness, the ancient AI that observed the hunt, expanded its analysis of the human. Something was unusual. The creature should have failed by now. It lacked every advantage. Yet it endured. The 48 hours ended. All across the hunting grounds, champions were transported back to the crystal chamber. Of the original 100, only 67 remained. Taman appeared in the chamber, covered in mud and blood, his hoodie torn, his eyes half closed with exhaustion. When the automated system scanned him, they found he was exactly where he had started. He had walked in a massive circle for 2 days straight. A camera drone floated up to his face. Human Taman had asked in its mechanical voice, "What was your strategy for survival?" Taman looked at the camera with dead eyes. "I have pulled all-nighters studying for exams I still failed," he said. This was just longer and quieter. In Seoul, Hana stared at the screen. She was starting to understand something. Taman was not trying to win. He was too tired to care about winning. He was just too stubborn to quit. And somehow that made him dangerous. Champions were led back to their quarters for a rest period. Medical teams treated their injuries. Taman slept for 18 hours straight, and when he woke, his shoulder was bandaged and the pain had faded to a dull ache. He checked his phone out of habit. Still dead. No way to charge it here. He set it aside and went to find food. Tomorrow the second trial would begin. And somehow, impossibly, Taman Kang was still alive. Taman woke to find messages waiting for him, millions of them. The communication system in his room was flooded with transmissions from Earth. His face was apparently on every news channel in Korea. People were calling him the Walking Dead. Students were making memes about him. His parents had sent tearful videos begging him to come home safely. There was also a message from Soman, his ex-girlfriend. She said she was sorry, that she had made a mistake, that she wanted to talk when he got back. Taman deleted it without finishing. Some things were not worth his time anymore. Hana, the Korean agent, sent him tactical briefings about the other champions, videos explaining combat techniques, survival guides. Taman scrolled through them but did not really pay attention. He did not think any of that would help him. He was still alive because he was too tired to play by anyone else's rules. But when he saw the message count, when he realized millions of people were watching him, something shifted inside him. Not hope exactly, more like responsibility. He could not just be some random kid anymore. The whole world was watching. The voice announced the second trial. All 67 remaining champions gathered in the transport chamber. This time the rules were different. They would be placed in an urban combat zone, a destroyed alien city. They had to eliminate 3 other champions each. Weapons would be provided. Time limit was 72 hours. Taman felt his stomach turn. In the first trial, he could just walk and avoid everyone. In this one, he had to hunt. He had to kill. The transport activated, and suddenly Taman stood in the ruins of a city. Buildings made of strange materials lay broken and collapsed. Streets were cracked and overgrown with weird plants. The sky was gray and ash fell like snow. In front of him was a table covered in weapons. Plasma rifles, energy blades, sonic disruptors, things he did not know how to use. He picked up a rifle and tried to fire it at an abandoned vehicle. The shot went wide, hitting nothing. He tried again, missed again. Frustrated, he threw the rifle aside. Instead, he picked up something simpler. A metal pipe, heavy, solid, easy to understand. You swing it at things and things break. His communication device buzzed. Hana's voice came through. Taman, you need to think strategically. These are trained killers. You survived the first trial by accident, but now you need to actually fight. Taman cut her off. No. I survived because nobody thought I was worth hunting. Now they will. so I need to be scarier than I look. He felt something change in his chest. The numbness was fading, not replaced with happiness or hope, replaced with anger. He was angry at the exam he failed, angry at Soman for dumping him, angry at the universe for throwing him into this nightmare, and now he was going to use that anger. Taman spent the first 6 hours exploring the ruined city. He found a collapsed building and began working. He pried up floor panels, weakened support beams, created a trap. Then he started making noise, banging metal against metal, shouting random words, making himself an obvious target. It did not take long for someone to find him. The creature that appeared had 4 arms and looked like a giant mantis. Its name was Quillith, and it moved with the precision of a trained assassin. It raised a plasma weapon and aimed at Taman. "Surrender," Quillith said in a clicking voice, "and I will make it quick." Taman did not surrender. He jumped. The floor collapsed beneath both of them just as he had planned. They fell through 3 levels of broken building, crashing through rubble and debris. Dust filled the air. Metal groaned and twisted. In the darkness, Quillith had better senses. It could see in the dark, hear heartbeats, track movement. But Taman had something else. Desperation. He fought like someone in an alley fight behind a school. No rules, no honor. He went for eyes. Broke joints. Used the metal pipe to smash anything he could reach. Quillith was faster and stronger. But Taman was meaner. When Quillith tried to use technique, Taman threw rubble. When Quillith tried to aim its weapon, Taman tackled it into broken glass. When Quillith tried to retreat, Taman followed, relentless and angry. The fight ended when a piece of ceiling fell and pinned Quillith down. Taman stood over it, bleeding from a dozen cuts, 2 ribs probably broken but alive. Quillith was eliminated by the automated system. Across the galaxy, the audience watched in shocked silence. That was not how champions fought. Champions had technique, style, grace. This human fought like an animal, like prey that had gone mad with fear and decided to take everything down with it. Taman dragged himself out of the collapsed building and found a place to hide and rest. His ribs hurt with every breath. His hands were bleeding. But he had 1 elimination, 2 more to go. Over the next 60 hours, Taman got his 2nd and 3rd eliminations using similar tactics. He never tried to outfight opponents. He set traps, used the environment, made himself look weak, and then struck when they got overconfident. He fought dirty, fought mean, fought like someone who had nothing left to lose. Other champions began to avoid the areas where he was spotted. Whispers spread through the combat zone. The human fights without honor, without rules, like a cornered rat. Stay away from it. With 6 hours left in the trial, Taman sat in an abandoned building, trying to tape his broken ribs with strips torn from his hoodie. He heard footsteps and looked up to see Vrexkal, the giant lizard champion, standing in the doorway. Vrexkal did not attack. He just looked at Taman with his 1 red mechanical eye. "You fight like prey that learned to bite back," he said. "But prey is still prey, human. You will not survive much longer." Taman looked up at the massive warrior. He should have been terrified, but he was too tired and too angry to be scared. "Yeah," Taman said, "but on my planet, prey that bites back is called a predator. You will figure out the difference eventually." Vrexkal stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. Taman watched him go, confused. Why had the champion not attacked? They were enemies in this trial. Later, Taman would learn that Vrexkal had already gotten his 3 eliminations. He had come to study the human, not to fight, and what he saw had disturbed him. That night, Vrexkal accessed Earth's file in the Galactic database. He wanted to understand what kind of species produced a creature like Taman. What he read made him uncomfortable. Humans had hunted mammoths to extinction using just stone tools and patience. They had crossed ice ages on foot. They had sailed across oceans without knowing what was on the other side. They had split atoms not knowing if it would destroy their whole atmosphere. They were persistence predators who never learned when to stop hunting. They were not warriors. They were survivors who learned to fight. And that, Vrexkal realized, might be worse. The trial ended. 32 champions remained. Taman was one of them, barely. He was taken to medical facilities where machines healed his broken ribs and sealed his cuts. The pain faded, but the exhaustion remained. In his quarters, Taman received another flood of messages from Earth. He was trending worldwide now, not just in Korea. People called him a hero, a fighter, a symbol of human resilience. Taman did not feel like a hero. He felt like someone who was in too deep and could not find a way out. But people were counting on him now. Not just Korea, all of Earth. He could not quit. Not anymore. He fell asleep thinking about what Vrexikal had said. Prey that learned to bite back. Maybe that was all humans were. Prey who got tired of running and decided to turn around and fight. And maybe that was enough. The third trial was different from the first two. Instead of raw survival or combat, this one tested intelligence. The 32 remaining champions were transported to a massive labyrinth filled with puzzles, traps and challenges that required thinking, not fighting. Taman stood at the entrance to the maze, looking at walls covered in symbols he did not recognize. Other champions were already working on the first puzzle, their minds adapted to alien logic and mathematics. He was expected to fail quickly. Human brains were wired differently from galactic standard. The puzzles were designed for species that thought in ways Earth evolution had never produced. But Taman had spent years taking tests designed by people who seemed to hate students. He knew how to look at a problem and find the shortcuts. The ways that were not exactly cheating but were not exactly following the rules either. The first puzzle was a wall of buttons that needed to be pressed in a specific sequence based on the symbols above them. Other champions were studying the symbols, trying to decode their meaning. Taman looked at the wall for a few seconds, then just started pressing random buttons. On the 15th try, the door opened. Not because he solved the puzzle correctly, but because he accidentally triggered an overflow error in the system. The computer had not expected anyone to just keep trying random combinations without thinking. He moved to the next room. This one had a physical puzzle like a giant mechanical lock. Other champions were using tools and precision. Taman grabbed a rock and smashed the mechanism until it broke open. The door unlocked. Broken, but unlocked. The witness watched this with something close to confusion. The human was not solving puzzles. He was finding exploits. Breaking things. Using methods that technically worked but were completely wrong according to the design. Several hours into the trial, Taman turned a corner and found himself face to face with another champion. She looked almost human, but her left arm and part of her face were mechanical. Her eyes were cold and calculating. Her name was Nari Cho, though Taman did not know that yet. She was a cyborg warrior from a civilization that had been destroyed in the last Galactic War. She had been fighting in the hunts for 10 years, trying to earn refugee status for what remained of her people. They stared at each other. Neither attacked. In the labyrinth, combat was allowed but not required. The goal was to reach the end, not eliminate others. "Why are you fighting, human?" Nari asked. "You could withdraw. No shame in surviving this long." Taman leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "Because if I quit now, my bad day wins. I am too petty to let that happen." Nari blinked. Then unexpectedly she laughed. It was a harsh sound like she had not laughed in a long time. "Humans, you are all insane. I respect that." They ended up working together. It was not planned. They just both reached the same puzzle and realized two people could solve it faster than one. Nari understood the alien logic. Taman found the shortcuts and exploits. Together, they moved through the labyrinth faster than either could alone. Alliances were technically allowed in the hunt, but they were culturally taboo. Champions were supposed to be lone warriors. The galaxy watched in shock as the human and the cyborg helped each other through challenges. At one point, they reached a bridge puzzle. The bridge would only support one person's weight. One of them would have to find another way around, which would take hours. Nari started to turn away. "Wait," Taman said. He looked at the bridge, then at the walls. There were pipes running along the ceiling. "Climb across those. I will cross the bridge. We meet on the other side. Why help me?" Nari asked. "We are still enemies when this ends because being alone sucks," Taman said simply. "And life is hard enough without making more enemies than necessary." They crossed together and continued through the maze. As they walked, Nari told him about her homeworld. How it was destroyed, how she was fighting to save the survivors scattered across refugee camps, how she was tired, so tired, but could not stop because too many people depended on her. Taman listened. He understood being tired, being trapped, having no choice but to keep going. Suddenly, a voice filled the labyrinth. It was the witness speaking directly to them. "Human Taman, why do your species form bonds with those who should be rivals?" Taman stopped walking. He thought about his friends back home, his parents, even Hana, the agent he barely knew but who was trying to help him. Because being alone sucks, he repeated, and life is hard enough without making more enemies than necessary. The witness was silent for a moment. In 4,827 tournaments, no champion had ever given an answer based on emotional preference, rather than strategic advantage. The human's response was not logical, yet it carried a truth the witness had not considered. The trial continued. Eventually, Taemin and Nari reached the end of the labyrinth at almost the same time. They had both qualified to advance. They nodded to each other and went to separate rest chambers without another word. 16 champions remained. The next trial would be announced soon. That night, Frexcal studied recordings of Taemin in the labyrinth. The human's methods were crude, inefficient, but effective, and his alliance with the cyborg showed something the other champions lacked. Humans built teams. They cooperated. They sacrificed individual advantage for group benefit. On Earth, a new movement was growing. Students were wearing shirts with Taemin's face. Workers were using his quotes in their daily lives. When things got hard, people said to each other, "Be like Taemin." Too tired to quit. Hana coordinated with governments around the world. Everyone understood now. Earth had been noticed by the galaxy. Whether Taemin won or lost, everything was going to change. They needed to be ready. In his quarters, Taemin could not sleep. He kept thinking about Nari's story, about her destroyed world, about how she kept fighting even though she was exhausted and broken and had every reason to give up. He realized something. He had started this tournament not caring about anything. His bad day had made him numb, but somewhere along the way he had started caring again. About Nari, about the people watching him on Earth, about proving that humans were not weak just because they were not the strongest or the smartest. The next morning, the announcement came. The fourth trial would be different from anything done before in the hunt's history. The remaining 16 champions would be divided into teams of 4. They would have to work together to eliminate the other teams. Only one team would advance. The galaxy was shocked. Teams in the hunt? But the witness provided no explanation. It was testing something, looking for something. And somehow Taemin suspected it was testing what he had just shown in the labyrinth. The ability to cooperate. Teams were assigned. Taemin was grouped with Nari, a crystalline being named Dohyun who spoke in light patterns, and an aquatic creature called Thirax who hated land but was a tactical genius. Frexcal was on another team, along with 3 of the deadliest champions remaining. They were expected to win easily, but Taemin looked at his teammates and thought about something. He was not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most skilled, but he knew how to make a team work. He had spent his whole life in study groups, group projects, team sports. Humans knew cooperation. Maybe that was their advantage. Not strength or intelligence or technology. Just the simple, stupid willingness to work together even when it did not make logical sense. The fourth trial was about to begin, and for the first time since clicking that spam email, Taemin felt something close to confidence. Not because he thought he would win, but because he was not alone anymore. The fourth trial arena was unlike anything Taemin had seen before. It was a massive environment that kept changing. One moment they were in a forest, the next moment the trees melted away and became a desert. Then the desert flooded and became an ocean. Then the ocean froze into tundra. It was designed so no team could specialize, so no one had an advantage. 4 teams, 16 champions. 3 days to eliminate everyone else. Only one team would advance to the final trial. Taemin stood with his team. Nari checked her weapons, her mechanical arm whirring softly. Dohyun pulsed with different colors, communicating in light patterns that Taemin was slowly learning to understand. Thirax floated in a water-filled suit, muttering about how much he hated working with land dwellers. They should not work together. They were too different. But somehow they did. The first few hours were tense. Other teams were already fighting, trying to eliminate each other quickly. Taemin made a decision. "We do not engage unless we have to," he said. "Let the others fight. We save our energy." Nari nodded. Smart. Why waste resources? They moved through the changing terrain, avoiding conflict. When the environment became an ocean, Thirax led them through underwater passages. When it became a desert, Do-hyun used his crystalline body to reflect light and create signals. When it became a frozen wasteland, Nari's mechanical parts kept working when organic bodies failed. And Taemin? He made decisions. Not because he was the smartest or the strongest, but because he asked questions. He listened. When Thirax suggested a risky water ambush that would put him in danger but give the team an advantage, Taemin agreed immediately. When Do-hyun wanted to retreat and regroup instead of fighting, even though it looked cowardly, Taemin supported it. The team began to trust him. Not as a warrior, but as someone who valued their survival over his own glory. By the end of the first day, 2 teams had been eliminated. Only Taemin's team and Vrexkal's team remained. The environment shifted to an urban warfare zone. Destroyed buildings, rubble-filled streets, perfect for ambushes. This was Taemin's strength. He had learned in the second trial how to use cities as weapons. A message came through on a neutral frequency. It was Vrexkal requesting a meeting. "It is a trap," Thirax said. "Probably," Taemin agreed. "But let us hear what he has to say." They met in a cleared space, both teams keeping distance. Vrexkal stepped forward, his massive form casting long shadows. "You have exceeded all expectations, human," Vrexkal said. "But you cannot win. My team has superior firepower, experience, and tactical coordination. Surrender now. I will ensure your species gains favorable status regardless. You have proven your worth." It was a good offer. Honorable. Strategic. Taemin could end this now, save his team from a fight they would probably lose. He looked at Nari, who had become something like a friend. At Do-hyun and Thirax, who trusted him. At Earth, watching millions of light years away. "No," Taemin said. Vrexkal's mechanical eye flickered. "Why? Not because I think I will win. Because my team did not come this far to quit now. And because you have been assuming I am playing your game. I am not. I am making you play mine." "What game?" Vrexkal demanded. Taemin smiled, tired and grim. "The one where I refuse to give up, no matter what. You have been a warrior your whole life. I have been a stubborn kid who does not know when to quit. We will see which one is more dangerous." The meeting ended. Both teams withdrew to prepare for the final confrontation. Taemin's team spent the next 20 hours setting traps throughout the urban zone. They did not plan to fight directly. They planned to make Vrexkal's team fight the environment itself. Every building was rigged. Every street had hidden dangers. Every advantage the warriors had would be turned against them. The battle began at dawn on the 3rd day. Vrexkal's team was better, stronger, faster, but Taemin's team made them work for every inch. They set off explosions that split the team apart. They lured warriors into traps. They used hit-and-run tactics, never engaging directly, but even with all their planning, Taemin's team was losing. Thirax was eliminated first, caught by a plasma blast while covering their retreat. Then Do-hyun was taken out when his position was overrun. Only Taemin and Nari remained, exhausted and wounded, against Vrexkal and his 3 teammates. They made their last stand in a collapsed building. Vrexkal found them there, weapon aimed, victory certain. "You fought well, human," Vrexkal said. "But this ends now." "Yeah," Taemin said, barely conscious. "It does." He pressed a button. The building exploded. Taemin and Nari had spent their last hour rigging every structural support with salvaged explosives. They were not hiding. They were setting a final trap. As the building collapsed, they were protected in a reinforced chamber they had prepared. Vrexkal's team was not. The dust cleared. Nari crawled from the rubble and eliminated 2 of Vrexkal's teammates who were pinned and unable to fight. Taemin dragged himself out, bleeding from new wounds. Vrexkal survived, but his last teammate was crushed under debris. The timer hit 0. 3 champions remained alive: Taemin, Nari, and Vrexkal. According to the rules, they all advanced to the final trial. They were transported back to the crystal chamber. medical teams rushing to treat them. Taman could barely stand. His vision was blurry. He had burns and cuts and probably a concussion. But he was alive. The witness appeared, its voice filling the chamber. The fifth trial will test what the fourth revealed. Not survival, not combat, but something humanity has mastered, the willingness to sacrifice for others. Across the galaxy, beings watched and wondered what that meant. But Taman understood immediately. The witness had been studying humans all along, watching how they formed teams, how they helped rivals, how they chose cooperation over competition. The final trial was going to test the one thing that made humans dangerous, not their strength or intelligence, their irrational loyalty to each other. As medical machines worked on his injuries, Taman looked at Nari recovering in the chamber next to his. She had fought beside him, trusted him, almost died for a team that existed for less than 3 days. And Vrexikal, the mighty warrior, had offered him surrender with honor instead of just eliminating him when he had the chance. Whatever the final trial was, it would not be about fighting. It would be about choosing, about what mattered more than victory. Taman closed his eyes as the medical machines hummed around him. He was so tired. He had been tired since before this all started, back in that PC bang in Seoul when he clicked on spam and his life changed forever. But he could not rest yet. One more trial, one more choice. And then maybe he could finally sleep without dreaming of explosions and alien warriors and all the ways he almost died. On Earth, Hana watched the broadcast and understood what was coming. The final trial would not be about Earth winning. It would be about what Earth was willing to sacrifice to win. And she prayed that Taman, the tired teenager who had somehow made it this far, would make the right choice. Whatever that choice was.